Welcome to the Sellernomics podcast, sharing valuable tips and information in the Amazon and e-commerce space. Each week, we deliver the best interviews with some of the top Amazon personalities in the industry to help you grow your business. Today's episode is brought to you by GETIDA, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. And now, here is your host, Rob Stanley.
Hey everyone, Rob Stanley here. And we got a really good one here on the Sellernomics podcast today. I've got Ernesto Reza. He's going to come on in just a second, and we're going to be talking about how to accelerate brand growth sustainably in Amazon. Be sure to post some questions, hit that that thumbs up and that likes. We do appreciate it. And let's bring Ernesto to the stage. Hey Ernesto, how you doing?
Hey Rob, doing great. How about yourself?
Doing great. So thanks for being on. We've been actually trying to get you on for a while, and we did have something scheduled, and a new opening came up, so I jumped and got Ernesto on here. We just got done with Prosper about a week ago. Loved hanging out with him, and his knowledge is always amazing to hear about. So let's jump right into this. And again, if you guys have any questions, be sure to post those in the comment section, and we'll try to get to them as we go. So Ernesto, why don't you kick this off with what helps accelerate brand growth? That's kind of one of our right with our topic that we're talking about. Let's jump right into it. And why don't you tell us what you got?
Yeah, man. So first thing first is you got to know your numbers. You got to know what are your cost of goods sold, how much are you dedicating towards advertising. And the more you can know this by product basis, the more you have the right foundation to then be able to accelerate growth. Then you got to know where you're going. Are you looking to exit within the next 1 to 2 years? Are you going for a lifestyle business? Are you trying to keep this as a side hustle? So you really got to understand, what are my numbers? Where am I going? And finally, what are you good at? To be successful in e-commerce, you need to do product images, listing optimization, how to handle your supply chain, do advertisement, customer success, customer feedback. There's so much that you can do. So especially for a ton of sellers where, this is a side business, a side hustle, and even for those that are dedicated full-time to their business, focus on what you're good at. There's a plethora of activities that you can focus on. The best value that you can bring to your brand is focusing on the things that you're good at, and then finding tools, services, third-party agencies, whatever you need to help you run the other aspects where you might not be so good or things that you want to hand off. So going to the good listing, what makes a good listing? Well, first, you want to make sure that those target keywords, the ones that really drive volume to your product, that they're spread out in the listing, whether it's in your title and then as well as in the product in the bullets. And then what's really important is to make the most use out of the images. 3M a few years ago did a research study where they basically were able to get to the point that the human brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. 60 times faster. So that means your images and video are going to be critical to success. So you want to make sure that you're making the most use out of all the real estate that Amazon gives you in terms of having the perfect image size. That way, so when people go in there and try to zoom over your image, it expands and they see the full detail. Then critical in there is also having lifestyle images. So for example, let's say I'm selling soccer cones. Well, maybe, or cones for sporting activities. Maybe in my lifestyle images, I want to have some toddlers playing soccer with the soccer cones. Then another athlete, using them to do endurance training. So for you want to help people as much as possible imagine themselves using your product and seeing, hey, now I get how I can use this product. And then, on top of that, product video. Product videos are great at helping drive conversion. Ideally, you want to aim for 30 to 45 seconds. And in there, sparse throughout there have like some of the key takeaways that you want for customers to have about your product. So again, going back to the cone example, maybe you want to highlight that they're durable for 5 years. They're great for all weather, things of that nature. Then what really, really accelerates brand growth and what we've seen, especially as the Amazon ecosystem matured, is that it's becoming a pay-to-play platform. So advertising is going to be either your best friend or your worst enemy if you don't have it working for you. And what it means, how do you get it working for you? Well, again, it's first understanding your numbers. So understanding your numbers allows you to know how much margin you have to play with for your advertising. By knowing your numbers, I mean, hey, again, what are the cost of goods sold? Am I taking Amazon FBA fees into account? The more granular you want to get, if you really want to take into like 3PL storage, Amazon storage, the more okay, here's how much it costs me to sell my product, and here's how much profit margin I have. That's what gives you that area to play with. Like, okay, now this is how much I could potentially advertise against. And from there, you need to start finding, okay, well, I have sponsored product, sponsored brand, sponsored display, sponsored video as your main go-to sources. For some of the bigger sellers, you can leverage DSP, but that's, you need to have $35,000 committed to monthly ad spend. So for a lot of sellers, that's way beyond budget. But focusing on those 4 key advertising types really can drive value. And then it's focusing on expanding keywords, focusing on those longer tail keywords where there might be less competition and where you can stand out and have, squeeze your advertising budget to have a lot more performance there.
Yeah. We had a question come in, and that's great information. We're going to jump into more of this. Julia had a question regarding some ad agencies will advertise advertising management for Amazon, but how is that different from advertising optimization?
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 ways to think about it. Advertising management is just like, hey, we'll help you kind of find targets to go after. We'll help you promote your product. But ads optimization is really like, okay, getting really data driven and how looking at data and what it's telling you, like, okay, how should I reallocate? 1, expanding coverage, right? Like I'm going after more keywords. But 2, understanding that, okay, now I have my, let's call it 100 set of keywords that I'm advertising against. And I've only have $5,000 of monthly spend. How do I distribute between sponsored products, sponsored brands, sponsored display, sponsored video? And then within those, how do I dedicate my budget to the different campaigns? So optimization of advertisement really focuses on being data driven, understanding, hey, I'm constantly monitoring my campaigns, constantly monitoring like, hey, which ones are getting more efficient over time? Basically, your ROAS, return on ad spend, is getting bigger. Or, do I have high performing campaigns that are running out of budget at midday? So in like black and white, they might seem like they're not performing so hot, but it's really not because they're not performing so well. Rather, it's because they're performing extremely well and they're just running out of budget early on. So that's what optimization is really taking a look at the numbers and trying to understand from the limited budget that I have today, how is that best spent, and how do I need to be constantly, moving from one campaign to another, adjusting my bids so that I can have that top of search, for example, or it's just like really letting the data drive the decisions around where should I focus, and taking into account how's my catalog looking. So if we see that, for example, you got to take a look at your inventory levels. You want to make sure that advertisement is always working for you, not against you. And at times, if you just focus on driving ad sales for the sake of driving ad sales without taking a look at your inventory, you can cross detrimental activities where you were pumping those ad sales, you drove a product out of stock, and now you're out of stock, and it's going to take you time to bring that product back in stock. So you might actually be losing that organic rank. So you paid money to go out of stock to lose rank. So that's what optimization is. It's like really like, hey, let's take a look at the whole business to really understand what's going on and make sure that advertising is always working for me. And for sometimes that means, hey, let's stop advertising for this product because I might drive it out of stock. That then opens up more budget to dedicate towards other campaigns that you can further accelerate the growth of other products. So that's what optimization really is. It's like constantly looking at all the data sets and all the information to make the most informed decisions so that advertising works for you.
Absolutely. I'm going to also ask you, how important is it to understand the product you're selling? And let me give you an example so I put this in context. You were talking about soccer cones, right? And if you don't know, or hopefully people do know, that a lot of places around the world call that football. So if you're in the US, we call it soccer, but when you're outside the US, it's called football, or they'll refer to us as American football, but that's a different thing. So how important is it that maybe you understand your product? Because when you go, let's say from the US market, you start to expand internationally, you're going to need to understand that there's some variations to some of these products, some of the wording used, maybe some of the descriptions. Have you run into something like that? And what kind of tips can you give on that?
Yeah, so that's a great point. You definitely want to take a look at which markets you're selling in, especially because once you expand internationally with Amazon, which Amazon makes it very easy for you, or rather, makes it easier than it would be with other kind of like e-commerce platforms for you to expand globally. And you need to understand both, like you said, context of who am I selling to. for example, in Germany, they're more driven by numbers and understanding like, hey, what value this is going to add. Whereas in places like maybe France and Spain, they're more driven by emotion. So it's understanding like, hey, my audience that I'm going after. And even within the US, I don't want to take credit, but this is a great tip that Vanessa, I forget her last name, I'm sorry, so I'll look it up and I'll send it up after. But at Prosper, she mentioned like, hey, in Amazon US alone, you have the ability to kind of do the dual language in your listing, basically have it in Spanish as well. And that opens up a flood of like opportunity because so many customers in the US are Latin American. And then for so many, English is not their first language, so they might not even speak English, but they're still leveraging Amazon. So if you can present your product to them in a language that they understand, they're more likely to convert.
Absolutely.
And then to expand on that, I'm talking all about things that you can do on Amazon while you're trying to get that customer to come through. Once you actually land that customer, then another way to accelerate your brand growth is through that like customer experience. Really delight them. They're used to getting that Amazon black box with the black Amazon Prime tape, and then open it and like, okay, cool, I got my product. But if you open it and then they get a really premium feel or a really amazing experience of like, wow, this is not what I was expecting. I ordered just like, let's take it to a very dull example of like a spatula, right? And Amazon is going to be very hard for you to stand out with a spatula and all that. And you say, well, how can you even delight a customer experience once you deliver them that spatula? Well, maybe in there you also include like a free ebook for like recipes that they can do, or even like, taking it to the next level. Maybe you create a partnership with someone like Freshly or some of these other food delivery services. We're like, hey, here's a free three meal trial with Freshly so that you can use my spatula to cook that meal, right? So it's like, hey, how can I add a lot more value to my customer without being there? So basically letting your product speak for you once that customer receives it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just flashed up on the screen right there real quick. You were mentioning Vanessa. That's Vanessa Hung. She's a good friend of mine, and absolutely you guys should pay attention to her. She puts out some great content. So yeah, I just got that on the screen there for you guys to take a look at. So Ernesto, let's also talk about, sorry, I lost my spot. The resources. So we talked a lot about tips here that, a lot of people should be using and, things they should be doing to kind of get things going. Actually, a question just came in, but I do want to kind of go on to resources. So you know what, actually, why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, let's answer the question that somebody has. And then we'll also talk about some resources you can use as a seller. We'll be back in just 2 seconds.
Thanks for joining us this week.
Oops, wrong one. Sorry.
Today's episode is brought to you by GETIDA, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GETIDA.com/Sellernomics.
Yeah, see what happens when I haven't done the podcast in a month. Yeah, head on over to GETIDA.com/Sellernomics. Get your free $400 in FBA reimbursements. And yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, getting back to the show here, I got Ernesto Reza from Mayan.co. And there was a question that did come in about the topic you were just talking about. Barbara was asking, what are some of the most common mistakes you've seen sellers make in regards to their advertising in Amazon or on Amazon? And why don't you answer that? And then we'll move on to the next question regarding resources that sellers can use to help with leveraging their growth. So go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the biggest mistakes I see sellers make is not leveraging advertisements. And I think, you really need to look at what Amazon's doing to understand how important advertising is today and how important it's going to continue to be in the long run. So if you look, I'm going to get a little nerdy here, but I would say Amazon's last quarter's results, they released them. And it's the first time ever that they broke down the line item of Amazon advertisement. And last year, 2021, they generated $31 billion of advertisement. But that's curious, Amazon is a massive business. Everything that they do, especially when it comes to their financial statements, there's a reason why. So I started, digging a little deeper into the numbers and trying to really understand, like, why was Amazon, breaking this out now? And if you really start looking at it, there's a lot of their expenses, a lot of where their investment is going to is warehouses, whether it's creating new warehouses or, leasing more space. A lot of their line items were around that, about like inventory management. So what that signals to me is that, okay, because of the pandemic, because of that boom, a lot of sellers experience like now the changes in restock limit, where it was that product by product. Now it's like your whole portfolio. Amazon's constantly changing it, where like one day you might have 1,500 units of restock limit, the next day you might have 1,300. So what I took from that is that Amazon is investing heavily into increasing capacity. And why are they increasing capacity, and why they did bring out that line item is because by increasing capacity, sellers can send in more product, new sellers can come into the platform, and all that means that they're going to advertise more, spend more money on advertisements. So one, you have to it's pay to play, so leverage it. Two, another big mistake that I see a lot of sellers do is just over relying on Amazon's automated advertisements. It can be effective at helping you find good keywords, but it can also be extremely effective at driving ad spend that doesn't generate sales. For example, going back to the spatula example, it might help you find the keyword, ladle for your spatula. So sure, it's associated with the spatula, but it's not really going to convert, because someone that's searching ladle on Amazon is not going to purchase your spatula. So those are some of the biggest mistakes I see. And finally, is like, finding the wrong partner to work with. There's unfortunately a lot of partners out there that, one of their first recommendations that they will ever make is, hey, let's crank up your ad spend. And so that's how you're going to generate more ad sales. And while, yes, spending more can help you generate more ad sales, it's not necessarily the best way to approach it, because you might already be leaving a lot of value on the table with the advertisement budget that you have today. So really focus on like, hey, squeezing the most performance out of that today, and then you can increase ad spend. And then lastly, going to the one I mentioned before, is not taking into account inventory levels, where you might be driving like, hey, things are looking great, I'm generating a ton of ad sales, but not seeing how that's impacting your inventory. You drive yourself out of stock, and now you're at danger of starting to lose that organic rank, which we all know how valuable that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's good information. And let's continue on. So one of the questions I asked right before the break and right after as a second question is, so what kind of resources can sellers take advantage of that you've identified that they can kind of help themselves grow, at least on Amazon? What have you found?
Yeah, well, first and foremost is other sellers. Like that's one of the things I love about being in the Amazon ecosystem, is how everybody is just in it to win it, and not at the expense of others, really. But it's very community-driven ecosystem of people that discovered a new hack or a new technique willing to share that. So first and foremost, connect with other sellers. There's tons of meetup groups, there's Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, anywhere. I mean, there's 60,000 sellers alone that are doing between $1 million and $5 million. 60,000. So chances are there's one of those very close to you, and it's just a matter of like reaching out, and people are very willing to help. From that, then you have, again, going back to, you need to understand where you're going and what your goals are. If you're looking to sell your business soon, if you're trying to keep this as a lifestyle business, if you always just want to keep it as a side hustle, because then from that you start saying, okay, well, these are my goals for my business. This is what I'm good at. Okay, what kind of partner do I want to like start handing things off to, and how do I want to do that? Do I want to be like completely hands off and just set it and forget it, and people report back to me and show me performance? Do I want to be kind of like guiding, but like they do the implementation, or do I want to just tools that enable me to do it more effectively myself? So understanding that, kind of like how you want to approach your business, and again, what areas that your time is best spent in, is kind of how you start your search. And from there, there are full service agencies that you basically hand your business over to them, and they'll take care of it for you. There are virtual assistants. There's a large presence of them in East Asia, and then a lot of now coming also from Latin America. And then you have, tools and third-party services that, can either focus on a variety of things or just on one point solution to help you grow your business. But by and large is lean on other sellers. It's especially if they're at the $1 million+ mark, it's very likely that they've tried a few of the tools out there, a few of the services, and can guide you on like, hey, this is what I liked about this tool, this is what I didn't like about that. So yeah, lean on each other. Your sellers are what create the market. You guys are the experts, so lean on each other a little bit more. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's lots of good Facebook groups out there. of course, I'm always having people on the podcast that I like and have been around a while and totally understand what they're talking about. And Ernesto is one of those people. So Ernesto, let's dive in. You mentioned exits. Let's talk a little bit about that. So if a seller is thinking about exiting, talk about maybe some tips that they should be doing, and kind of how does your company fall into helping with that exit to maybe try to help them either get a better multiple or to make it a little more streamlined.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is where my background comes into play. So I was the third employee at Thrasio, the largest and fastest growing aggregator. I was the first brand manager there, fully ran and operated a $2.5 million brand for 6 months that I was selling out of 7 Amazon marketplaces. And then for the last year and a half, I was helping build their internal reporting and automation systems that by the time I left, we're helping manage more than 65 brands and over $200 million in revenue through Amazon. And what that showed me is like, look, one, the easier that you can make the process for those whoever's looking to buy your business to understand your business, the better. So that goes back to knowing your numbers. The better that you can point to, here are my costs, here's how much I'm spending on advertisement, here's how my sales, here's how like performance was compared to last year. And the more data that you have, the better. Two, the more that you can basically make it an easy transition for the purchaser. So meaning that like, okay, you have a high performing brand, but to really take it to the next level, we're gonna have to put a ton of effort and work into it. That's gonna affect your valuation. Where versus if it's already kind of like, hey, here's the keys and the Ferrari's on the like in the driveway and it's ready to go, just press the gas to the pedal to the metal and it's gonna take off. The more that you can do that, the better the evaluation will be. And so again, that goes back to like having your listing as well crafted as possible. If you be brand registered, that's key to increasing your valuation, and having a good brand registered website, like storefront. Understanding your supply chain well. So understanding that, hey, here are all my manufacturers, here are the deals, here's how long it takes me to get my product from manufacturer to like Amazon. Here are the 3PLs that I work with. Basically, as much as documentation that you can have on your business, and then for any potential, like if there were dips in sales or anything like that you can point to that say like, look, this wasn't because the brand wasn't performing. Actually, I went out of stock, so that's why sales dipped here. Or hey, my listing was suspended because we know Amazon is a monster. I talked to a customer that they sell pet products, and in their description they had my fur baby. So Amazon's automated bots were like, oh, fur baby, pet products, flag, So the more that you can have like point to and give detail and understanding of like, hey, this is what my business was, this is how it's been, and basically the more you can just make it an actual handoff of like, here you go, like this business is operating well, is like running smoothly, the better valuation that you can have. And so how we come in is right now, we do analyst reporting where we report on your brand's sales, inventory, and advertisement performance at the SKU level, at the brand level, and at the portfolio level. So you have multiple brands. And what we really shine at is our ads optimization. So, hey, take your existing budget and squeeze a lot more performance out of it. So what that translates to evaluations is like, hey, we're showing that your brand's in a path of accelerated growth. And we haven't even touched like supply chain listings, pricing. We haven't put any more capital into the brand, which is literally just the brand that you sell today are dedicated towards advertising budget and accelerating growth. So that just makes aggregators or anyone buying your brand like their eyes blow up. They're like, oh, this brand is on like up and to the right. That's good. I want that, because I know that like from the investor, the buyer's perspective, is saying like, okay, if I'm gonna buy this brand, so the way for anyone that hasn't been in the sales process or explore that, basically they do seller's discretionary earnings. So basically like, hey, what did your brand earn in the past? Usually they do past 12 months, but if you have really accelerated growth, they might look at past 3 months and just multiply that by 4, past 6 months and multiply that by 2. They look at all that and say like, how's your brand trending? So one, always sell when you're up to the right, not in the downward, because then people are gonna like take advantage of you and say like, well, your brand is declining, so we're gonna give you a lower valuation. And the more that you actually have like an audience, so if beyond Amazon, you have a good Instagram account, or you have a large email list of clients that you can hit up, or if you have, the more repeatable purchases that your product is, right? So like a spatula, going to that example, you might buy that once every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Whereas, tea bags that like actual tea, you might buy that more frequently. So also like understanding what's the lifetime value of my customer, your customer acquisition cost. Basically, the more information that you can tell to anyone looking to buy your brand, here's my information, here's my package, it's ready to go. You don't really have to do any of the digging or the kind of compiling of information yourself, the better the valuation is going to be, because you allow for that transaction to be smoother and for the acquirer to be like, okay, cool, I can do a quick analysis. I mean, they're still going to do due diligence, but I'll trust your numbers. I can do it fast. Boom, here's your money.
Yeah, that's good information and definitely helpful. We are gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk to Ernesto a little bit more about, and hopefully you guys heard this earlier, that he was third hire at Thrasio. So if you don't know who Thrasio is, probably haven't been around this industry, because they're like one of the biggest aggregators out there, and some crazy valuation they just got. So we're gonna take a quick break, come back, learn a little more about Ernesto, about his company and what kind of services he's offering, how he can help you out right after this.
Did you know that Amazon probably owes you money for FBA reimbursements? Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GETIDA.com/Sellernomics.
Yeah, so once again, I got Ernesto Reza, and he's from Mayan.co, and he's on with us, and we're talking about, we just kind of wrapped up talking about how to accelerate brand growth sustainably in Amazon. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comment section. Even if it's after the live show, we'll make sure Ernesto gets the question and we'll get it answered. And that is something we try to do. But Ernesto, why don't you tell us a little bit about, and we don't need to go too deep into it, but kind of how did you get started in the ecosystem of Amazon or Amazon ecosystem? Thrasio, how did that come about? And then what brought you to Mayan.co? And tell us a little bit about the services that it offers.
Yeah, so I really got, just like many of the audience, I was looking to launch my own e-commerce brand as well, really focused around, I'm originally from Mexico. I love playing football for those in the U.S. soccer. And so I was going to launch a brand around there. And so Carlos Cashman, he's a co-founder, co-CEO, or now just CEO of Thrasio. He was part of the same fraternity group that I was at MIT, just he was far ahead of my time. And he was renowned of being a successful serial entrepreneur. So he emailed out saying like, hey, I'm up to my shenanigans this time in the Amazon ecosystem. I was like, oh, great. Let me go learn from him about entrepreneurship in general, but also about like the Amazon ecosystem. And that's how I got that opportunity. Like I mentioned, I came on as the employee number 3. I was the first brand manager, fully ran and operated a brand that was selling out of 7 Amazon marketplaces for 6 months. I was doing $2.5 million. And for the last year and a half, I was really focusing on helping Thrasio create their internal technology for reporting and automation. So basically to manage the portfolio. And that portfolio grew to 65 brands and over $200 million in revenue by the time I left. And what Mayan does is we're focused on seller empowerment. We're a growth automation platform. Right now we focus on ads optimization and a full analytics reporting suite. And yeah, we basically, so my background, my family, I come from a family of small business. My parents have a catering business, and after 10 years, they finally opened their food truck. So I understand a lot of like the drive, the dedication, the sweat, blood, and tears that goes into creating a business, and especially, that my background was with my family was in the restaurant business, but I understand what it takes. And so after, developing my expertise, my knowledge, and, my whole background professionally has always been around data and automation and, just extracting insights of data and letting them inform the business decision. I was like, okay, how can I take all my knowledge, my expertise, and help people like my parents excel at their business? Just now I'm focused on e-commerce sellers. And so that's what drives us. And that's how I put together the Mayan team. We're extremely talented group of individuals, but more than anything, great people. And that they all just want to focus on helping other sellers grow. And so that's just kind of in a nutshell what we do. We do ads optimization. We accelerate brand growth. 60% of our customers within 3 months of working with us have their highest ad sales month in history. Within the first month, on average, you experience a 30% increase in ad sales, 25% increase in ROAS performance. So we're really focused on driving results. And that's all with the existing budget. The last recommendation we will ever make is to increase ad spend. For a few of our customers, we actually tell them, hey, you could maintain this level of ad sales and actually, cut back on your ad budget a little bit. Let's really optimize Sui's performance. And then in the future, we can talk about increasing advertising budget again.
Yeah. So Ernesto has an amazing team. I got to meet a pretty good chunk of them at Prosper last week, and they're absolutely incredible, very knowledgeable. Loved coming by the booth. So it's a little off topic, but I want to mention this. So those of you who are watching on the video, he's got this amazing background behind them. They also had this background at their booth, like their pop-up. And I want you to just tell us a smidge, describe it for those who are listening, kind of what the background is, and also tell everybody just a little bit about how that came about, because you had a really good story you told me at Prosper, and we won't do the long version, but just tell us a little bit about that background you have and describe it first.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, I'm calling in from Playa del Carmen, Mexico. For those of you that don't know, it's basically in the rear end Mayan of Cancun, of Mexico. So if you know Cancun, Tulum, I'm right smack in the middle of that. So that's what gave a lot of, I wanted to bring the jungle, the tropical vibes to the ecosystem. And, I also have a great admiration for the Mayan culture, the Mayan communities. In my mind, they were one of the communities that really established a really harmonious balance between civilization and nature. And more than anything, they thrived in the jungle. They made it their home and were able to excel and succeed there. So we want to bring that to the Amazon sellers. We want to help you thrive in the Amazon jungle, bring great buys, and that's what really, and they were also a super advanced culture. They were one of the first communities to ever come up with the concept of zero. They have one of the most accurate calendar systems because they were constantly they studied the stars, the sun system, the lunar cycle. So they were just very, data driven, like we are, in just their own way. But
absolutely, yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, you said that a local artist actually made it for you, right?
Yes. So shout out to Veronica. She is, she does this. There's this great brand of just Mexican themed T-shirts called I Weigh, and I'll send the link in the description. So I find it because I love those T-shirts. I wear them a lot myself, and I was able to somehow come across her profile on Behance. And I was like, oh man, I love your work. Is there a way that we could ever get to work together? And she was open to it, and she created that is illustration custom to us. And over here, that's Chichen Itza, which is where our logo comes from. And that's known the pyramid there is Kukulkan, which is like the serpent god of the sun. And in the summer solstice, you can actually see on the side of the pyramid, the snake comes down and makes it a really cool image. So
that's so cool.
I just love the
I told Ernesto, I'm like, I was like, you got to get this person to make you shirts and then give them out at Prosper. Would probably be the hottest shirt going. Everybody would want one because it's an amazing graphic, amazing design. And anyways, not to get too much off topic. Actually, you need to have that person make T-shirts, and you guys need to sell them on Amazon or something. So maybe you can work with them on that. But great having you on. Let's do a quick give everybody your contact information. How do they get a hold of you? And then give out the website name, and let's make sure everybody knows how to find out more information if they want to get a hold of you and have a question for you that maybe we didn't get answered.
Yeah, definitely. So again, you can find me on LinkedIn at Ernesto Reza. The website is mayan.co, mayan.co. If you want to reach out to email, you can email us at info@mayan.co. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and chances are there might be one of our teammates in a city near you. We're fully distributed. So I myself, like I said, I'm in Playa del Carmen. My 3 co-founders, one of them is in San Francisco, the other one is in Henderson, Las Vegas, and the last one is in Madrid, Spain. So we're just as sprawled out as the Amazon ecosystem is.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, so love to get them to an event when we have one here in the Bay Area. That's always going to be a great time. And be sure to reach out. It's mayan.co. Always great having you on. And so I was in Cancun actually a few weeks ago for some business stuff and didn't get to reach out to Ernesto and get a hold of him. But one of the things they kept mentioning, because if you haven't heard, I always wear the money suit around. So they kept going, well, what are you? I said, I'm the money man. And they would say, hombre dinero. That's what they kept saying. Hombre dinero, money man. So after a while, they're like, oh, I like it. And I'm all hombre dinero. So it was a lot of fun. Anyways, be sure to check out Ernesto and check out his website, Mayan.co, for any help you need or any questions you have regarding Amazon selling techniques or tips. And Ernesto, always great having you on. It was a pleasure seeing you last week, you and the team. And thanks again for making it on to the Sellernomics podcast. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure seeing you prosper, as it always is, and looking forward to seeing you again more often.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Sellernomics podcast. Special thanks to our sponsor, GETIDA. Did you know that Amazon probably owes you money for FBA reimbursements? Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at GETIDA.com/Sellernomics. Be sure to join us again next week for more great tips on how to grow your business. And thanks again for listening.